My name is Ruth Maltje, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Winfried Holze. After yesterday's presentation by Excel Dynamics, we today will have a look more in detail into the spatial development framework. Mr. Holze is a qualified urban designer and architect who spent a number of years in Germany before returning back to Namibia. He has been involved in a few architectural projects in Windhoek and in Swakopmund. Swakopmund, he was a consultant for the Swakopmund Spatial Development Framework. He's here today to give us more information on the shop house, on the shop house development concept, as well as the process that should be followed to allow a sustainable city development. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it's a nice opportunity for me to present my thoughts on city development. This came as a reaction to there's a town planning firm which has been employed by the City of Windhoek to do a structural plan for Windhoek. And knowing how town planners work and what they are going to propose, which they have already done, but they've only sent it to the City of Windhoek, I think it's not going the right way. But this is my idea of how I would develop the City of Windhoek, and it's just an idea. It is nothing set in concrete, but it has its merits probably, and it's in a way hitting a sore spot. And I think it is a way I believe Windhoek should develop in the future. I know what the town planners did for Swakopmund, for Walvis Bay. That's why I have a little bit of internal information, and I know how they're thinking. I hope there's not another town planner here other than Jane. Because it's going to be a bit, I'm going to be a bit tough on the town planners. Yeah, so what is a structure plan? Does it turn? The structure plan is, the principal purpose of a structure plan is for an urban settlement to provide guidance on the intended future development of that settlement. Its function is to inspire, provide hope, and inform the inhabitants as to where the city is heading, and it informs future private and public investment opportunities. It is a very important document which shows where the city is going to go for the next few couple of years, and there we are. There are a couple of problems which I identified which plagues this city. The first one is the apartheid mindset, apartheid legislation, apartheid planning. That is still present. If Hage Geingob says, blames everything on apartheid, he is completely right. But it's something to blame it, but it's another thing to do something about it. We cannot always play the victim, but we must also provide alternative solutions, and solutions which are really help us forward. The second problem is the lack of land propaganda. I call it propaganda because Windhoek has 1,550 persons per square kilometer. That is now not the entire Windhoek boundary, it's the original Windhoek boundaries, without the outlying 5,000 square kilometers which they added. So it's just until Brakwater down to Prosperita, Avis, and on that side, Rocky Crest and Ochemize and so on. But in comparison, like Luanda has 6,300 persons per square meter, Harare 1,600, Johannesburg 3,400, Pretoria 3,600, Cape Town 1,900, and like Hong Kong 6,700. So we are very, very low population density. So we don't have a land problem. we have just a planning problem as far as I'm concerned. So the other thing is the housing, unemployment, and poverty myth. I call it a myth because it needs not to be there. And I blame much on it on town planning, because that is a subconscious. People are more conscious about their daily problems, bringing kids to work and so on. They never think about, why do I have to travel so far? Why must I actually go into a car? Why aren't there no bicycle routes? Things like that. So but me going into urban design and town planning, I know where the issues is. And if you had better town planning, we would have less housing problems, less unemployment, and less poverty. All right, Windhoek has had 2 spatial development frameworks to date. The first one was done in 1892, Code van Francois, which was basically the first settlement plan as such. And basically it demonstrated Klein Windhoek, Groß Windhoek, showed where the defenses are, where the land, the mountains are, and it was basically very straightforward planning, saying where is the water, where are the views. So it was a very simple plan to start off Windhoek. But then the second plan came after 1960, around about there. This is now the apartheid diagram. In this apartheid diagram, they specified exactly where is going to be the white middle class, the white higher class, the white lower class, when the colored township, the Indian township, then they really subdivided the whole city into individual parcels and even functions like movement, zonings, and things like that. So this was a typical apartheid plan. It's been adopted to every city, towns, small settlement, village, or in South Africa and obviously Namibia. And this is the legacy which we are dealing with or dealt with until now. I just took that plan and I superimposed it a little bit on Windhoek and just try to see whether it actually is. And if you see there, the railway line going down there, which split Windhoek lower income, Windhoek white higher income, the CBD in the middle, then on the edge being separated from the white areas is a physical barrier. One physical barrier can be a mountain, can be a river, but it can also be a freeway. And so on the other side, we have African areas, colored areas, then we have industrial area in there. So that is more or less how the apartheid plan was then adopted for Windhoek. And if you notice, I will get into it more deeper, the buffer zones between even the areas, and the buffer zones then became very convenient for high voltage electrical lines and things like that, sewer lines and so on, to make sure we're keeping the people separate. So what is the planner's idea of a new structure plan? This is the ideas which I filtered through, what the information I've got, and what I've seen, what they've done for Walvis Bay. They are thinking of developing nodes. Nodes are like little areas like Klein Windhoek, where you have the post office, you have some shops, you have some flats. That is a node. Or Olympia, where the Vermanbroek Center is, or Eros, the other Vermanbroek, or Bain Center. Those are nodes. And the planners before used to like designing townships, and in the middle of a township, they then put a little shopping center or a little convenience center, and now they are in a problem area where they say, oh, all the places have their own little shops and little convenience centers. How do we now connect them, or we have a problem? And so they say, no, let's develop those nodes. Let's just focus on those nodes and make them more intense. So what they're doing is they want to ring fence development area, including, in other words, ring fencing means they go from street to street, from north to south. They say within that area, we will really relax some town planning regulations, and in order to get urbanity going. So, but I don't know which some regulations they want to relax, because we have zonings, we have a residential zone, we have industrial and so on, or business zones. Now I just want to see how they first would have to change the town planning scheme to be able to densify, for instance, the nodes, because I'm sure that say now I would stay in Klein Windhoek and they would to say, okay, we're going to densify this area here. Your neighbor can put up a 4-story building or a 5-story building. I don't think I'm going to be very happy about it, but that is what the directions which we're going in, because we want to densify the city. So that's their idea. And also they've coined now this very fancy word, polycentric development. That is what it's being termed now. And I had the privilege of working on one of these ideas. Just by accident, I came into this. This is Olympia. And I had a client there on Esther Brandt Street, which is now Hamotenia Street. And he wanted to rezone his earth and consolidate it. And then the idea came, yeah, you may, but you have to pay betterment fees. You have to have a traffic study. You have to have an engineering study for all the services in the entire area. And our precinct area doesn't go that far. So we will have to actually change the precinct areas. The precinct area was just Wermanbrock and the Gemeindezentrum there on the corner. And those dentists and medical shops, that was their precinct area. Now suddenly they said, oh, we have to increase our precinct area, and that is where the black line is, to that area to accommodate everything. And I suggested as an urban design exercise that because there are all the sports facilities and all the entertainment facilities, so why not have Esterbrand as a kind of a business street where business-related, sports-related shops could be, and so on. And then on top, 2 or 3 stories flats, or accommodation. And they said, yeah, everything is fine, but we're going to not have business where we're going to have office. And I said, no, office, half of CBD is empty. Why would we have office there? And the COVID situation also showed us that offices are actually not needed anymore. We need business, we need activities, sales, that kind of thing. But so that is what happens then. Then the planners, they say, yeah, you can do this and this, but we change it. So what was the purpose then? And so this is what is happening there with these nodes. But what is more, how do you call it, striking, or the bigger problem I have is that it is actually an adaptation of the apartheid plan. So if you come back to the original apartheid plan, we just changed the names and substituted them with black dots. But the apartheid plan is still there. It hasn't changed. We still have a buffer zones. We still have a physical barriers, things which we are not linking up. If I superimpose it on the Windhoek, like the barrier, physical barrier is the A1 or B1 bypass. We still have Karatura, and we are not mixing. We're not linking up. So the other thing is, nodes are not little townships. Nodes are neighborhood activity areas, like a police station and a post office and a grocery shop and something like that. Or maybe even like Klein Windhoek is a little node. And for nodes to be functional, to be working, they need to be in a line, or they might need to be on a connecting road. It's like pearls on a string. So the one node must be able to link up with the next one, with the next one, with the next one. And that is at this stage not possible with these areas in Windhoek, because nodes then start developing left and right on that road, along that road. You know, more businesses starting developing on that roads. Once these businesses start developing, more people move to these corridors or along these roads. And the minute more people will get to it, public transport system becomes feasible. So, you know, that's when you start getting corridors. And because younger people are getting attracted to the corridors, that's when a public transport system becomes viable. So that is the idea of nodes and corridors. It is not corridors or nodes, it's corridors and nodes, and they must be able to link up. So that is a basic principle I'm proposing or getting towards. So what should be? What is my idea what the structure plan should look like? I think we should dismantle the apartheid city by creating a unifying framework from which everybody can benefit and create wealth. We cannot remain with the separate developments. So if I see it on the original apartheid plan, I see the things being connected up, destroying the buffer zones, crossing the physical barriers. In the city plan, something like this, where really the city starts linking up. But the question is now, that is the utmost, the top theory. How do I do this? Mr. Thackeray said, when it comes to shelter and placemaking in an age of limits, a city's primary resource is the energy and motivation of its inhabitants. It is not politicians, it's not city councillors, it's the people who do cities. And that is what the main motive is also of my plan. So what do I propose? It's now getting a bit complicated, but let's see. I'm proposing a mix between participatory community placemaking, providing opportunities for private and public settlements, investment, overall densification, implementation of predictable services engineering, extensive user mix and mixed uses provision, including different housing options, shop houses and urban design along major arterial roads. I get to the description of arterial roads just now to link up everything. But that is the primary idea. And the thing is, if I start a structure plan, I must identify where is the biggest problem, where is the highest unemployment, where is the highest density, where is the most informal settlement, where is it hurting us the most. And I identified Monte Cristo Road as being my first implementation of that plan. Monte Cristo Road is interesting in that there is the poorest people of the population. It's also the highest density and the most unemployed. But it has the highest potential of becoming a wonderful place, in that I'm choosing Monte Cristo, which is now being named Inyas Peter Nanyemba Street, because it has so many empty spaces. I've identified various empty areas where one could do mixed use housing, closed housing, flats. There are some properties which are privately owned, which are big, which could be redeveloped into multi-density, multi-use developments. Lovelands Township is an industrial area which could be densified and be changed also with or introduced housing within the industrial area. Then there are also existing properties along that road, which then become part of this whole scheme. I will get to the how I would go about it, but the other idea is the main industrial development is going towards the north, towards Okahanya, Brakwater, Döbra, and so on. So that is where the workers will be moving towards. So the next best idea would be to install actually a railway station there at Van Eck Power Station. The other thing is Van Eck Power Station is outdated, it's past its sell-by date. Also, it is not environmentally friendly, and it will be closed down sooner or later. So the idea could be that in future that space could be turned into a shopping center, flats and high-rise area, which then culminates. So I have Monte Cristo Road going along there, and the other development is Ongos, which is obviously right at the top there. So I will have a constant movement along that road, which then also makes a public transport system interesting. So to implement this, I would need to bypass the City of Windhoek. I would need to create a new management and coordination company, which takes over the coordination of all of the aspects which are involved in urban design and town planning. And there are lots of NGOs and so on who would be part of this company, or call it grouping, or group of specialists. There would be a participatory planning and coordination between property owners, community members, and local authority. So you have every property, every guy along that road gets asked, what do you want your property to be? How can we develop it? How can we make it a nice place for you? The informal settlements. I mean, there's an area which was earmarked for fresh produce market, a huge area which is empty and there's nothing happening. That could be a very dense housing place which needs to be designed. And then there would be a preparation of an urban design framework based on form-based coding or collaborative agreements. Now, this form-based coding is a new development in planning internationally. All cities are now doing competitions, and they invite the whole world to design a suburb or to design half of a city. And then they work out on that city, how are we going to develop it? They get everybody in, from the municipalities to the government to the property owners. Everybody gets involved. In Germany, something like that is called, once it's fully worked out, it's called the Bebauungsplan. That means a certain street gets certain rules and regulations and if you build in that street and you build exactly as planned or as in that form-based code, you don't even need to submit your plans to the municipality. It is already approved. The other thing which safeguards your designs is that you obviously need to insure your buildings. Now the insurances are being pulled in because surely if you insure something, you will make sure that the building doesn't burn down or it has enough ventilation and everything. So the insurances are taking over the responsibilities of a municipality. And so it becomes even more stricter and more controlled and more policed, which is, I don't think is a bad idea, because at this stage, City of Windhoek is taking up a lot of responsibility and a lot of risk on itself by approving plans. And if something happens, you can take them to court because they supervise it and they checked it. And so they can be made liable to that as well. So the advantages of a system is that there is a short implementation period, like between 5 or 10 years, depending on the size of a development. Investment security, because the plans are already pre-approved. So if somebody from the outside comes in and says, I want to buy that earth already has plans, I'm going to build this thing there, and he's good to go. There's no hackmack with the City of Windhoek about little pavement heights and things like that. There's less opportunity for corruption because it's privately driven. Opportunities for foreign direct investment. The foreigners are getting more and more worried about corruption, and they don't want to be involved in corrupt activity because that also hurts their image. Infrastructure planning certainty, water, electricity supply, sewer, and telecom. The thing is, if you have a corridor and you have a designed a street, you know how many people are going to be more or less living there within the next 50 to 100 years. So you know how big you have to design the pipes, and you add some extra for in case. Whilst if you have these nodes of the planner's ideas, you never know whether that node is going to increase to the size which you think. So at what stage are you going to increase the pipes? At what stage are you going to make provision for larger sewer pipes or larger water pipes? Say now you think Klein Windhoek is going to be the place, and we're going to put there 200,000-300,000 more people. But knowing the population of Windhoek, Klein Windhoek, they will say, not in my backyard. So suddenly you're making all that investment, but it's being wasted. Whilst on that corridor idea of mine, you already know what is the end capacity of that system. You increase the density, mixed uses, automatic migration of informal settlements towards formal housing. So if you have now that street there and you have flats and everything, automatically the people will leave the shacks and move to where they have money and employment and a roof over their head. There's a provision of rent-controlled and privately financed accommodation. So some of these empty areas, if a city wants to develop flats, they do rent control, which is Job Amapuna's grand idea. Or you have private accommodation, 3-4 story flats. Immediate impact on poverty alleviations, which means there's already businesses happening at the bottom, so you have permanent employment opportunities, mixed uses, things like that. Sustainable and regular public transport system. As I said, if a corridor becomes more populous, the public transport system becomes interesting. Whilst with a node idea it is still, I have to drive from Karatura to Klein Windhoek. In between, there's nothing happening. So I have empty buses going back and forth. In actual fact, Windhoek doesn't have a public transport system. We have buses which bring the workers to work in the morning, and then they pick them up in the afternoon. That is not a public transport system, that's a delivery service. There's less pressure on the already extended financial means and work capacities of a municipality. They would never be able to manage this kind of intensity because it's very complex, it's very intense. You have to do a lot of consultation with people, which the City of Windhoek cannot do. The form-based code and the collaborative agreements, they supersede the town planning scheme. At this stage, the town planning scheme kind of blocks everything. It tells what you may do on that zone and what not, whilst this form-based code is much more flexible. But once it's established, you don't need the town planning scheme anymore because it supersedes it. So you can say, okay, this is now the new rules and regulations. It's the property values along the road start skyrocketing because you see the value increase. This means wealth creation. And finally, environmentally conscious planning, a smart city solution. So, it is not anymore expansion into the periphery, but getting closer into town. So, but it doesn't need to be at Monte Cristo Road. So the next project would be then, I called it Claudius Kandavotsu Street, which is on the western side of a bypass. There's a big power line going along there, and that is actually also meant there to separate areas. So that would be an ideal space if we could get rid of a power line to have additional high density housing along there. The other idea is Novo Industrial, to introduce housing on the industrial urban. At this stage, you may not have accommodation on industrial urban, and yet there are so many people working there. So why not allow people also to stay at the industrial urban? We haven't got the industrial revolution like the old days where you have chimney stacks, smoking all over the place. We're becoming much more smarter, computers taking over, robots taking over. So why not allow accommodation in the townships? But the big idea is, which I have, is Independence Avenue. We have that big bridge which goes over the A1, A4, A1, yes, bypass. That would be an ideal place to broaden that bridge, put buildings on either side. It's like a Ponte Vecchio in Florence. You don't see the street below anymore, but it starts linking up Windhoek East with Windhoek West. It has a very big symbolic value. There's the how do you call it, the prison, which is outdated. I'm sure the state would like to have another big capital project, and that would be ideal for them to build another state-of-the-art prison complex somewhere else and free that space up for high-density development. And the other thing is Meatcore. The days of Meatcore are numbered. I think it's going the same way as in Namibia, and it will not take long for that space to be empty as well. That was also ideal for housing establishment, mixed uses. And that's where I would also put the next railway hub, public transport railway station as a counterpoint or as a starting point for that area. I call it Tulipamwe City Junction. Tulipamwe means together. So that is where I say this is where the real symbolic effect of breaking down the apartheid city would be, because Karatura is also known as the place we don't want to be. So this would be really something which we give a signal and say, look, we're breaking with the old times. But this is not where it stops. Hosea Kotako corridor could be quite interesting as well, where we have coming down from the prison area to Nast, and where Vanhill is. That could be another nice city center area linked there. We already have a station there, but we could build another passenger rail station there. It could be very interactive. The space next to Vanhill is ideal for a fresh produce market as general anyway. And following further on to where Pupkewitz is and where the junction is, where the railway goes to Gobabis or Rehoboth, that would be another nice spot for a passenger rail station. Also in the same way, like I did with Monte Cristo corridor, same idea, densifying along that road until that area. The next place would be from Hosea Kotako to Unam, the Mandumum Demofaya corridor. What we then have, if we have something like this, at the end of that line there, just before the railway line goes under the A1, there would be now another passenger rail station. It would be ideal because now I can actually travel from Ochimize, from Monte Cristo or from Ongos, all the way down to the power station and all the way down to Prosperita, cross over with maybe a pedestrian bridge, maybe a vehicle bridge, so that Prosperity has now 2 access points, not just one, which would be also ideal for workers who then just go by rail until there. But also I now get a link. I get a kind of a link, but it doesn't need to stop there. The next thing could be now Hendrik Witbooi corridor, which then links back again to Nast or to the city center on the same ideas as I pointed out earlier. But the big idea would then be to have Ochimize corridor, Ochimize Street, which then links Monte Cristo with a station here at the bottom at Pupkewitz and links up the corridors. So what I'm actually getting now is I'm linking the whole of Windhoek together in one circle. So all major cities in the world have these circle connectors. If you go to Wien, you have the kleine Ring, the große Ring, Münchner Ring. That is what makes connects cities up, and that starts dismantling our apartheid city, because now you can go in two ways, and it is dense corridors, and you still have your other areas which are untouched or maybe developing differently or slower. But at this stage, we need to start getting the economy going and getting housing going, and we don't need to go into periphery. We can group it all along the freeway and create a inclusive, unified city. But now, how do we do it in detail? Now, I wouldn't be an urban designer or architect if I didn't think of a detail that in a way sets us apart from planners. The planners think in two dimensions. They think of the written word and the line being the earth line. The written word is the laws, the zoning laws, and they apply the zoning law to that line or that area of, let's call it the X and the Y. We as designers think of the Z dimension, which makes it a three-dimensional dimension. The block, the house, the wall, the roof, the three-dimensional areas. But then there are space, time, and energy dimensions. Space being, how do these buildings, what spaces do I create if I have buildings next to each other or far apart or closer apart? What space do I feel? Time, how does time change over time of a settlement? Does it, the generations, new people coming to it, other people dying away or moving away? You know, trees are growing at one stage small, then they get big, then they get small again. So that's a time dimension. The energy dimension, everybody heard about Feng Shui. You know, there's certain energies between buildings, even though if you're in a space, you feel something. Maybe it's a nice feeling, or maybe it's not such a nice feeling. So that you need to integrate those kind of ideas. But that's also where the engineers stop with their intelligence. And then we start thinking about the metaphysical and the spiritual dimension. The metaphysical being art, aesthetics, sociology, human behavior. That is sciences, which is not actually a science. It's I don't know, you cannot pinpoint it. And spiritual being, yeah, ancestors, things like that. It's like we wouldn't build now a 20-story building on a graveyard if we know people have died there or something happened in that area. We wouldn't build something there. So we have these things in our back of our minds, which are very important in town planning and which are very important for human existence in a closer environment. So that was just an aside, but now I'm talking about the arterial road. Arterial roads are normally like this. Sometimes they have a third lane, but they always have a big island in the middle. Then they have a big space on either side. This is now just arbitrarily 40 meters. That is what we know under arterial roads. If I have a section through that arterial road, you have high boundary walls there. You have in these streets the street lights, and that's it. That is your arterial road. It looks like something like this in perspective. And maybe you notice, you know, people have to run across the road. You cannot walk across because you might just get hit over it. Or if you are disabled, it is difficult to cross the roads. Sometimes you have curbstones which don't allow disabled people to cross the road. And I just drew, I drew this thing. Where you see a police car and an ambulance and a bicycle lying on its side. So obviously there was an accident. And there's not another car, so it was a hit and run. I'm just trying to make the arterial road even worse than what it is. But what are the typical characteristics of an arterial road? It is a high investment. and maintenance cost with little to no return. It's designed for a single use, speed, convenience, and volume, mobility of a motor vehicle. That is its only purpose. It's unproductive, so it is no wealth creation there. It separates communities, which is deeply rooted apartheid policy. Unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. No contribution to poverty alleviation, employment creation, or housing provision. And there's no provision for municipal services other than stormwater collection. And yet we're paying for that space. There's lots of taxpayers' money which goes into there purely for the motor car to be able to get there fast. There's high earth boundary walls encouraging criminal activity on both sides, which means, like, you know, if you have a high wall on the other side, you don't see what's happening there. And if you're on this side, you have a quick getaway. So what can we do with those arterial roads? One idea would be the 30-meter width, where I would have 2 lanes still, of which 1 lane would also be used by a bus. The 3rd lane is in a bus stop and parking lanes, a green lane, then I have a cycle lane and a pavement lane, a pavement area. But I've still got a lot of space over, so let's go a little bit bigger. 40 meters, for instance, where I could have still my 2 lanes, a green lane in the middle, a green lane on either side, bus stop with parking lane, and a slip lane. Some engineers, town engineers, are so worried about their cars that they may just not be able to or drive that fast, so they want the cars to be separated. And the slip lane is a very slow-moving lane for slower cars. And then I have still the cycling lane and the pavement. But don't want to talk now about the street, but what is important about the street is what we can do with it. Luckily, our town planners had the brilliant idea of facing our properties away from the street, from the arterial road. So they provided the properties with their own street, with their own pavement, and their own access route. So this is actually ideal for us, because now each property can face its shop fronts towards the street. We could have a pavement there without cars crossing over to get into the property, because we have his access point at the back. He can have it for deliveries, he can have it for his own parking. So there is no danger of people being run over by cars because they can't get into the property. The other idea which I have is, you know, why not allow people to build over the pavement on the 1st or 2nd floor? So that would allow people to walk in the shade on the pavement, which makes it even more attractive. I could have outside cafes and things like that. If you ever been to Bologna or Bern in Switzerland, the whole city is on covered walkways, and especially with our heat and everything, and people would walk in the shade. So that then starts becoming interesting for an arterial road, where I have still got my cars and everything. I have bus stops, cycling routes, but I start getting activity in the roads. This is just for an example. This is Mandume and Demafayo at Pioneers Park and Academia. This being Academia, this being Pioneers Park. Just showing there the road which connects these properties up. The Mandume is from there to there, 60 meters. And there is now the other properties now there. The town planners had a brilliant, big idea of having panhandles. So you have actually 2 properties back to back. Each one being linked with a panhandle street. Interesting thing on this slide is how people sometimes behave. If you look at the top 4 urban, they are not very happy with each other, because they built themselves a road. They subdivided the panhandle. This guy wants his own road, that guy wants his own road, and he builds his wall there, and there's a gate at the front. Whilst these people here at the bottom, they probably have children, and they enjoy maybe some cricket or so. They don't have a wall there. They enjoy that space there, and they probably share it for cricket matches and things like that. Whilst you still have a road there and the traffic there, but the people and the children are protected there. So it's sometimes quite funny how Windhoek develops its urban spaces. So this would be a section through an arterial road where we still have our fast-moving streets, we have our parking, then we have our pavement, and where we have now the covered walkway and the shop line, the earth boundary is over here, but the building goes over. The other thing is with securing the municipal services, this is where we would then have the sewer pipe, water pipes, electricity channels, but also a space for maintenance to go through. And, you know, every time, so you wouldn't have this paratus kind of idea where, you know, pavements are being uplifted, and once they're done, then telecom comes along and they uplift the pavement. So you have all of this done once in that road. All the services are in. If there's any problems, you can, if there are any leakages in the pipes, you see them immediately. The maintenance people can see it. So there is not water pipes which need to be uplifted after a while. You have trees. You can see now the space starts looking different. So I just measured some street widths in Windhoek. Monte Cristo is 50 to 70 meters wide. Claudius Candavoso is 42 meters. Hosea Kotako is 30 to 60 meters. Mandume is 60 meters, as you saw now. Hendrik Witboy is 50. Otchemize Street is 70 meters wide. So that's a lot of space for a lot of road. Just to compare, Independence Avenue in the CBD, here Kaiser Street is 20 meters wide. In Kartura, it's 25 meters. And you see, it's a proper road. It's working beautifully. It's only that there are no cycling lanes. Just to compare, Cape Town Upper Main Route between Salt River and Newlands, 26 to 32 meters. So the idea which I have there, you can put it into that space anytime. It allows, we have even more space available to make even bigger, maybe cycling lanes, things like that. This is what it would look like if it was now changed. It's exactly the same 40-meter wide arterial road, which I drew in the beginning, changed to this, where also the crossings are becoming shown. I see there are still spaces for bypasses. The wheelchair man is now on the same level as the road, and there's a lot of more action on the picture. But what are typical characteristics of an arterial corridor? Human safety is prioritized. Pedestrians, the cyclists, the elderly, the children, the disabled, whilst in the other option, we don't even think about it. Highly productive, wealth creation, high return on investment, increased rates and taxes. Those pipes which are underneath the road, they cost money. And who pays for them? So if you have more people along that road, you get more taxes, you get more rates in, and that pays then for the higher investment of the sewer systems and so on. It is economically sustainable and a regular public transport system, because now you have more people along that road. The places are connected. As you could see, Otchemize is connected, Monte Cristo is connected, the whole city becomes connected, and that makes then a public transport system viable. High level of mobility and volume still guaranteed. So I still have the 2 lanes. I can still travel at maybe at speed, which the engineers call always at speed, but that is always a funny term, which I don't, why must we travel at speed? There's an integrated and accessible municipal service installation, which is what I call a smart city solution. In other words, I have a space to do the data lines, have the water lines and the sewer lines all compacted in a certain space, and it is accessible and it is maintained. I can maintain it. I have continuous employment creation because I have denser housing opportunities. I have more opportunities for shops at the bottom and living on top. High level of public security, being passive and active. People at the upper levels looking on the street and they can see, this is what we call eyes on the street. You know, you can see what is happening there, so it becomes much safer. There's no need for further city expansion into the periphery. We can actually accommodate the entire, what did he say yesterday? Another 700,000 population, which is expected to come into Windhoek along these roads. We don't need to have another low-cost, low-density housing developments further away from the city centers and workspaces as envisaged. There's additional floor spaces to smaller properties. So they're talking about the 200 square meter properties or the 300 square meter properties. I could even go down to 100 square meters. But if you go up and you can actually go over the pavement, then you're actually adding floor space on the upper floors, which would be very interesting for lower income people. So it's active, safe, and friendly public open spaces. They always complain we don't have public open spaces. Yeah, but I mean, they don't plan for them, or if they plan for them, it's always an afterthought somewhere else in a corner of some township. But the streets are our public open spaces. Those are the areas where we want to live. So just to bring it all together, I then made what I call the Buddha Spatial Development Plan. At the top there, you have Monte Cristo, then Claudius, then Tulipamwe City Junction there, going down to Hosea Kutako, going to Mandume, and there the 5 stations, which could then be like the S-Bahn in Europe, and then later on the Ochemize connection. So this starts linking up, and you don't see anymore the apartheid plan. You see the city of Windhoek. The power lines I would take out and realign at the back there. The amount of line which I take out is the same amount of line which I put back in. The power station then gets moved further north because that's where the industries are. And I'm sure they are already planning on some more carbon neutral power stations. We cannot have coal power stations anymore. In future, it would also be that Klein Windhoek would develop along Nelson Mandela and Samuel Yoma. Also, Robert Mugabe there at Kleine Cooper and Ours Blick could become an interesting corridor sometime. But the main focus would be Tulipamwe City Junction, Monte Cristo Road, and Hosea Kutako, and later on Mandume, Mefayo, and Ochemize Road. Maybe in future there could also be like little centers there at the junctions there, Monte Cristo and Ochemize. So, you know, we're starting to link up places and we're starting to focus towards streets. If you don't, if you are not in a very economic powerful position, then you rather go to smaller places, but you also need comfort. And the youth for today wants to have lock up and go flats. They want to have fun. But a township out there with no toilets and no water is not fun. And I don't think it's, the youth likes that. But this is something exciting. Other people can now go to Klein Windhoek or Ours Blick or so if they want to have a bigger plot, the house on their own plot. But we must cater for everybody. So we have a lot of options. We don't need to go outside the Windhoek area. But the idea of nodes by the planners, I don't think will work because it is not linking up our city. So in conclusion, do we wish to remain with an apartheid city polycentric spatial development framework? Or do we wish to finally get rid of past injustices and build a new, inclusive, wealth-creating and unifying future? So yeah, that is my story.
Considering that we're taking this all on Zoom, are there any questions? And if so, you please need to ask me for the mic.
To understand how you compare, sorry, my English is not so well, the situation with cities in Switzerland, because we have a completely other situation here, and who is able to pay all this, which you...
That is exactly the point. Who's going to pay for it? The thing is, we cannot expect a few to pay for everything, for expansions into further into the periphery. We need to create employment opportunities. We need to create commerce, and we can only do that by the people who work together. If you give him a place where he can start his business in a good way, like the shop house, for instance, if you allow him to stay where he's working, he's already saving a lot of money on transport. So now he's starting to generate income. And once he's starting to generate income, he becomes wealthier. The space, the house, which is, like at this stage, we have a low-cost housing thing. They all want to push the housing thing idea, but the house is a liability. The thing is, if you say now you have to take up money at a bank, and you have to have a job somewhere, and say you get disabled, then the house is also gone because you cannot pay it. You cannot keep up with the payments. But if you have a shop house development kind of thing, a shop house area, you have your own employment at the bottom, at the ground floor, and you're staying on top. Say now you become disabled or something happens, then you can rent it out. But that property is generating income all the time. Even if you're now renting it out for new business, you can use it for old age. At the beginning, you use your space at the bottom as a shop. After you get old, you move up to the top story or the back of the earth, but it's still carrying on generating money. It's just going on and on and on. Whilst the single residential property where you only may reside, you may not have businesses on there, and something happens to it, does not increase the value of the property. You're working your life off for the bank for 20, 30 years, and that's all you got, the house. And that is how wealth generation happens. We are at the beginning of this idea because at this stage, until now, town planning has been separating all our functions from live, move, play, what was it? Live, move, play, and so on. So, you have to drive to your workspace. You may only live here. You have your entertainment there. You have to drive your kids to school there because they may not mix. And that is what our problem is. And that is where our town planning and our separate mindset must change to becoming together. What is wrong with having your shop where you stay? I know the City of Windhoek has this idea of they call it occupational residency on your property. You may have 75 square meters of your house, which you can use for if you have a doctor's practice, or if you want to, or you are a dealer or something like that. You may have a little area in your house, but they kind of consenting it to you. You may have it a little bit, but you have to ask us first and so on. I don't want to be asked. I want to have my business at the bottom of my property because I paid for the whole property. I didn't pay just for where the house stands, and I want to use the property 100%. And that is where we have a problem at this stage.
Thank you. I can see the sense in this, and yet I wonder why it's not happening. And my experience is that also a lot of it's inside people's heads, and it's not only the town planner's heads, it's also the residents' heads. to have, do you have any plan of transforming attitudes? Because it takes everybody in the city, the occupants, the residents, to actually adjust to these new orders, to these new patterns of moving and mixing. And
That is exactly the same question I was asking myself when I did this, to get over this mindset of separateness. And the thing is, say now we were to change something in Klein Windhoek, there would be so much resistance to it. No, not in my backyard, not 3 stories, no. So it will always be blocked. That is how we have grown up. So I need to find a space where I can still have it, can still do it. That's why I chose then the arterial roads. The arterial roads are the engineer's dream. He has full use of that road. He uses that space exclusively, and he thinks that is the height of his achievement is to let the car drive. And I disagree with that point of view. I mean, I've read a book from he calls himself a recovering engineer. He is a traffic engineer from the United States, and he had this issue, apparently in the United States, they also have this issue, that they suddenly build these enormous big roads through the historic townships and things like that. And apparently they say, yeah, it's improving the mobility of a car. But a car has airbag, it has a metal frame around itself, it has brakes, ABS, and all of these security safe things. The human being on the pavement, he has none of that. So should we rather think of a human being instead of a car? The car can look after itself, but the human being is important. So he is supposed to be safe first. And this mindset of engineers that the car is the main thing, and if there's happened something to the car, it is the car's problem or the driver's problem. This recovering engineer even wrote there that if there is a death on the road, due to an accident, the accident is not exclusively the driver's fault. It is a fault in design, in the street's design. There should have been more trees maybe along the road. Maybe the road should have been narrower, so you would have automatically driven slower, because there are these things which make you scared. But if you have ample space, you put the foot down. I don't think I've driven along Hosea Kotaku once below 60 k's. It was always about 80, 100, because there's nothing stopping me. We just go. And that is the problem with these arterial roads. We need to, they are huge spaces. We pay for it, and it's only for the car. So it is space which we can utilize for this kind of intensification. That is how we can get people towards public transport systems, closer to the, and we're not destroying existing infrastructure in areas and so on. And that's how we start slowly getting together you can choose not to be in that road, but there's a lot of people who want to be there because there's action, especially the young people. They want life, they want shops, they want activities. And I have a problem with shopping centers. The shopping centers is the death of any town. So why not have a shopping centers in the arterial roads where everybody has a little shop? Now there's a clothing shop, there's a grocery shop, there's this and this and this. And every one of them is earning money. And they're not paying security fees, and they're not paying, what the latest thing is in shopping centers, that excess percentage of rent if for so much income and all of that kind of stuff, and body corporates and so on. You have your own shop, you make your own living, and the guy next to you, and the guy next to you, and the guy next to you. That is, I thought, could be a good way forward.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to make the point about, I know this top left dot up there, the corner of Monte Cristo and Ochimusi Street quite well, because I work there. And so this is like the least regulated bit And if you see what happens there, it's exactly what you are saying. So there's, I mean, on that corner, there's a welder, there's a guy building beds and other furniture, there's Kapana, there's a football field. If you go there on a Saturday, it's cracking. I mean, there's a lot happening there, and all the way down to the Havana Four Stop. So where there is no regulation, exactly that is happening. So people are living in houses where they're also selling stuff, and especially at that part of the road, that's exactly what's happening there. And the road gets quite tight, so it's not very big anymore. That helps, I think. And of course, the fact that it's not really regulated, and you just put up another shack and you got another shop. So yeah, so that's what's actually happening up there.
That street there is one of the streets which also kickstarted my ideas about our problem. Where the black line stops and the thin line goes on, rather more lower down, is where the connection is between Machiche Street and Monte Cristo. And that street is chaos. That's like deepest Africa there. But that is the urban space there. And what they're now doing is exactly building that four-lane arterial road through there. And I asked myself, how many people there actually have cars there? How many people, they're putting up street lights and everything. And I asked now, how many people there actually have electricity? But we are building this enormous road there with street lights, with a whole toot, just for Ongos. And I wonder now, is it now so that the people from Ongos can drive with an SUV through the poverty to get to Ongos in the morning and in the evening? Is that the idea of fun? Also, they are constructing that road right now. I see there's a school further up there, and the children run across that road. At this stage, it's just a dirt road, but there's a lot of children running across, and cows even, and sheep, and the whole tutti. Now we are destroying that whole ecosystem there with that one road, because the engineers say we need the mobility, we need to get there. So that is where I also have a big problem with.
Sorry if my English is not good enough. I'm Winfried Holze. I'm a bit worried because we don't take in account that we are living in Windhoek, and Windhoek has to take in account that we have a lot of faults, and that we have the Windhoek aquifer underneath the town, and we just ignore that if we construct everywhere, we are constructing exactly houses square on the faults, and we are having industry right on the way into our Windhoek aquifer and things like that. We should think of the natural situation and not ignore that side of the town planning at all.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's Prosperita and Simbambasia at the bottom. The aquifer is over here. I don't know how Simbambasia and how Prosperita got approved at all. I know in a way that NDC was responsible at some point, that they wanted to develop an industrial area. But that's where I say, I asked the town planning profession, how could you approve this? How could you allow this? I know there's political pressure, and there's also some things moving under the tables. There are enormous pressures, but that is the point, exactly why Prosperity should never have happened. Unfortunately, it did now. Now we're sitting with it, and it cannot be undone. That's why I say let's concentrate to rather areas which we have, like the arterial roads. We're concentrating, bad things rather closer together than adding things like that. So any new township is adding to sealing off areas. And that is the environmental problem, where the more roads you have, the more you're sealing the earth, the more floods you get. And, you know, this whole environmental discussion comes into play by these additional townships and so on. You know, I've had big comments about, because they wanted to now move the informal settlements along that portion of Monte Cristo, because of its road, they now realized, oh, we've got to move the people. So they established 4 townships. And then I said, okay, where are these townships? I said, yeah, a little bit more north and a little bit more west. So I took my Land Rover and drove there, and I see, but there are already squatters there. There are already informal houses. So what is this, the new township which you're creating? Which is on the same principle like always, a big street, single residential. So I say, now, what are you going to do with these informal houses? Are you going to move them further away or what? So, you know, there's no coordination. And I feel that, and the other thing is, there is not enough land for everybody to stay on his own house or its own little farm, its own little plot. There is, unfortunately, the need that the people need to be in flats. Flats is a starting point. You're not staying there forever. As you become, you're generating wealth, maybe you become richer, then you can start affording a single house, single plot. But, you know, after the Second World War, there were a lot of refugees who came to Germany. So there had to be a very quick plan to accommodate them, because the winter was on its way, or there were a couple of winters. So what do? You build flats. You accommodate them in spaces where there are toilets, where there are running water, electrical light. So what is wrong with flats? Why not accommodate the immigrants coming into the town, into the flats for the time being? Thereafter, if they have jobs and if they get money and they can afford it, well, then they can get larger properties and larger houses. That is how you start incrementally adding, making wealth. You cannot put the guy into a big 300 square meter plot with a small house and expect him to survive on it. That's when they start building shacks behind the shack, and we're back to the square one, the same shacks.
Good evening, Carsten Hostus. I just have, I like the ideas of the circles, and that's something which we see all over the world, and we have some main roads, and we hope that development is going along the roads, your arterial roads. But I don't understand your proposal or your ideas of having 2 or even 3 lanes there. That looks like a little bit 60 in Germany, autogerechte Stadt, or 70s, to have this big roads. How will you bring the people to use the public railways then? If you build these big roads and everyone wants to drive the car, you need to stop the cars. You need railways as a first, and then make it difficult for the cars to go.
I'm trying to be careful, because we have a problem with the engineers. The engineers are the gods in this country. They determine, and they can block everything, whatever you do. So I'm slowly but surely moving myself forward to tell them, look, we have to change. And then they maybe get a new consciousness, and they realize that there are actually also human beings in the town, and human beings have needs. And there's not just people who can walk on 4 feet, they are also disabled, and there's children and so on. So I'm trying to change the mindset towards humanity and human needs, but it takes time. When I did the Swakopmund structure plan, we had severe resistance from a town planner there, not town planner, a city engineer. He wanted to see his cars being able to drive fast and so on. And there is this big road. I don't know if you know Swakopmund there, from from where the municipality is now going towards Henties. That road is 80 meters wide. That is an enormous space. And I suggested to reduce that space, to go in that direction, have smaller streets, but then also all the bicycle and everything. I could get in all of that road and properties even, and still a service road at the back. But he wouldn't know, he wouldn't talk any, he wouldn't listen to this, because he saw that big space, and that is like earmarked for an enormous amount of cars which will come one day. And the other thing is, they said, no, we now just installed huge sewer pipes there. We had to blast through the rock and so on. No, we can't do it. You know, that kind of attitude we have to change, because we can build on very small areas. We can also drive slower. The roads which I designed for is 3.5 meters, one lane, which is ample enough space. You know, a normal car is below 2 meters. An SUV is about 1.9 meters wide. A truck is at the maximum 2.5 meters. So if I have 3 meters, it is hookah enough road width for a lane. But I say, okay, let's just add 50 centimeters just to make you happy. So that's why we are at 3.5. But I would go down to 3 meters. I even would go down to 2 point, you know, a parking spot is 2.5 meters wide. So that's why I think always in terms of space, how much do I need? How much can I serve? I think also about speed. We don't need to go 60 k's an hour. You can kill people with 60 k's an hour. What's wrong with 50 or maybe 45 to force people to drive slower? You can go on a B1 or on a bypass and you can drive fast, 120, 200, 120 and so on. But in town, you need to drive slower. And in Europe, we have the system. The human being comes first, then the cyclist, then the bus or public transport, and then the motor vehicle driver. So if anything, even if the pedestrian is drunk and he falls over and he gets knocked over by the car, the driver is being, how do you call it, held responsible. So that is how a system should be. But over in Windhoek, it's the other way around. It's almost the truck driver comes first, and then the car driver, and then or the SUV, and then the normal car, and the rest, you know.
Have you presented this to the City of Windhoek?
This is brand new. I finished this whole presentation and my letters about 2 weeks ago. The City of Windhoek received the structure plan from Urban Dynamics 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I wrote to them and I asked them, now, shouldn't it be such that the structure plan be presented to the public before you give it to the city? They said, no, the city needs to see it first so that they can make an opinion on it first. I said, no, that's not how a participatory rule happens. It is, you give it to the city, but at the same time, you tell us what you're thinking so that we can criticize it. So that's why I started thinking, you know, I have a time now. Let's think of how would I now change Windhoek? So that's why I say this is only my pure idea, and I've distributed it now to the councillors on a letter. I did not receive any replies yet. I even send it to Urban Dynamics. I didn't, normally they answer within minutes on my emails. I haven't heard a reply, so that must be either good or bad. But I'm distributing this idea far and wide, and it is starting to get some traction, especially with young Black students, young professional students, professional work people. They all come to me and say, look, this is the idea, this is how we should go forward, or it is something where we could work on. But at this stage, I'm alone on this, and I'm seeing how it starts developing.
Hartmut Voogts. I just want to remind African tradition. Keep it in mind a little bit. Talk to the people, as you mentioned now, to the young people and the elder people. Talk to them, what are their ideas regarding that all. And remember the bicycle. There must be provision that people can move with bicycle. Nobody wants to do it because they are so afraid because of the taxis driving like hell. And.
Thank you, Winfried. That was really just an absolute mind blast, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. What I would like to try and do from here is to take it back to NUS, to the architects and town planners, and to make a really vibrant project out of it the beginning of next year. So that is my dream for over Christmas, and let's hope it's realized.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Patrick Schneider. I'm not a town planner and also not a town and urban designer. I'm a sociologist, and don't have a lot of expertise, and I would need a little bit more time to understand that concept better because it seems more complex than it might be for the first moment, or within this limited time which we have at the moment. I would like also to highlight first that it would be if we talk about overcoming the apartheid framework, which is the heritage from the past, it is, I think, worth also talking to or conducting surveys and understanding what the people really think about, what their ideas are. So they are people-centered. That's a people-centered transformation. And then probably this with the street with three lanes in the northwest wouldn't happen, I guess. So that is one thing. I think also the combination between informal traders, the informal sector, and the formal sector at the same time is a connection which might be worth to explore maybe a little bit further, how that can be incorporated, because as what I experienced so far, there is quite a gap of coordination and of understanding between authorities from the city of Windhoek or from the municipality side and the informal sector. And I would like also to come back on the means for transportation on the bicycle. I'm only in the country for about 3 to 4 years right now, and I have the feeling that many Namibians love their bakkie. And this is something where we have personal experience where people use their horn, just even if they are families with their baby trolleys on an empty road, things like this. I think that transport might have transformative potential, as it doesn't cost any money if we look into bicycle or other opportunities. I think they're pretty easy solutions. If you look at some cities around the world, they put up these small blocks just to block one lane, and then cars can go there. They can get into these lanes, but they get damaged, and that's what nobody who loves his or her bakkie wants, I think. But for me, this is like I'm trying to get ideas. I'm trying to get different perspectives on this, and I think there are many people in Namibia who are interested in this topic, and also the legislative framework from a national level, but also bylaws, etc. What is existing on the level, for example, the City of Windhoek, is quite complex. And I think for most citizens, that's my experience, and I'm trying to get into it quite for a few weeks or a few months right now. It is so complex that probably a certain percentage of the citizens who would like to participate and give their thoughts and their input, especially those who live currently in shacks and informal settlements, that there's no possibility to understand how they can get involved, and also no possibility to understand what the legislative framework is. If we look at the different development plans from the past, playing the play together between the different levels, I think that is the stories of the people who live in these, the needs of the people, together with information sharing, access to information, is I think crucial for transformative potential for social justice.
Now, it's exactly what we are on about. The problem of participatory discussions is like a framework in Europe, here in Windhoek or Namibia. There is no participatory thing. There's either top down or nothing at all. And that is the kind of mindset which we are trying to change. Just to highlight on the cycling routes, I mean, they had a half-hearted idea here in Florence Nightingale Street where they painted a road and then they put little thingies there. I mean, it took about a month and they were all driven over. For a bicycle route to work, you need to have a curbstone which is at least like 20 centimeters high, so that if you collide with your wheel, you will know it. So, and the other thing is there needs to be a space between the road curb and the bicycle route. So I suggest planting like trees or something. The cars will make sure that they don't knock off the cyclist. But yeah, there are, and what I don't understand is that the chief of the planning department in the City of Windhoek, the planning and transport department, the main man there, he is a cyclist. He's a most enthusiastic cyclist. And yet, where are the cycling routes? I mean, if I was in that position, I would have said, look, we start here, first 100,000 is going in there, next year, next 100,000, but you must start somewhere. That is how I would have gone about it. But yeah, and the participatory thing is what I also see. You must come there. That's why I'm a, how do you call it? Verfechter, what is it? The promoter of a shop house. And people are always asking, oh, what is a shop house? What is a shop house? So I built a little model to demonstrate what a shop house is and how a shop house functions. We Europeans, we know what a shop house is because we grew up with it from the Middle Ages. But here, because we've been used to separate developments, zonings and so on, that people cannot visualize what is now a shop house. And to be clear, the only example is maybe Swakopmund. The old town of Swakopmund, you can maybe see what a shop house is. But otherwise, here, there's a little examples of, you know, maybe the spur in Independence Avenue is an example of a shop house. But so I built that house, and I also showed how it can develop. Like you first do the ground floor for your shop, and you stay at the back of your property. As you grow, as you make money, you start building the first floor on top of the shop, and you rent out the back flat where you stayed, or your grandparents come stay there. Then as money comes in, you put the next floor on, and you rent out the middle floor. That is how you go up. And then the top floor, you make it a concrete floor, which you make usable for green, for green, how do you call it, urban agriculture, things like that, because the properties are small. But that is how something can develop. But you are generating wealth at the same time, and they didn't get that concept right yet. So you have to come with examples. You have to talk to them. They have to be elders there, and it is talking and talking and talking over and over until they understand it and grip it. But the youngsters, they understand it immediately. But the idea is you need to have this participatory discussions, and that's why I also suggested we start with Monte Cristo Road and start getting these discussions going between the people. And that's why it cannot be done with a municipality. We need to have a kind of a company or an organization which is also supported by NGOs, maybe even foreign NGOs. There are companies in Europe. There was one firm which contacted me, and they asked me what could they bring to the table to do urban design or urban upliftment of informal settlements. And then I said, but who are you? How are you financed? Yeah, we are being paid by the government of Germany or other governments or other institutions, and that is how we are being financed, and we want to give that money now into these development projects. So there are firms, this was just one example, but there's a lot of companies who do want to bring in the expertise, and that is what we need. And if I have people like that, and we can then get to the communities and we can discuss this road, because some things, say for instance, the municipal services infrastructure, that is something, once it's there, it is there. I cannot move it somewhere else. So that is an engineering thing which needs to be planned. Once it's in, things can happen around it. You know, I don't need to think about the sewer anymore. I don't need to think about the water, but I can start thinking about what is happening on the side, where we are going to have trees, benches, bus stops, things like that. That is when urban design comes in. Town plans don't do that sort of thing. That is, urban designers do that.
Okay, final question.
Okay, so in your plan, I'd like to know, it obviously doesn't cater for the mall mentality, right? And mall development. Okay, so, but those are the guys with the money, and those guys are not going to keep quiet. And those guys have probably the biggest say, because the more money, the more say. So that is a kind of mentality. So the idea is great. I have seen that. Lisbon is a good example of a system like that. It actually works, things developing along the road. We already see, if you go a few years back, on the Fayu, that road, those used to be houses all the way down. They're already turning into shops and backpackers. And so it's already a natural progression. So that does make sense. And it definitely brings the activity closer to where people stay, which was when we listened to yesterday's speech, that was the idea. That was the idea with the node. But I think this would be probably a better way forward. The only problem is going to be the guys with the money. You know, the Ongos development, some guy made a lot of money very quickly, very short time. Elisenheim, lots of money, very quickly, very short time. You know, and those are the guys that you're going to have a battle with, to change the mentality with, and they're the ones that dictate. So how would you tackle that?
Yeah, I know that is, but that's why I was thinking of going more onto the political angle, convincing people that is what they want and need. You know, the Elisenheims and so on, you cannot afford as a low-cost person or unemployed. So I'm trying to maybe tap into the political spur, maybe, you know, get the political will behind it, get the politicians maybe enthusiastic about it, and then they can push the populace, maybe. I don't know that, I know about the money, and if I don't have those people behind me, but that's why I also thought, you know, you have to have opportunities like an Monte Cristo Road, where they can do these. You need to have that flow. It's like a river. If a pool which doesn't have a river becomes stagnant and the fish die. So you need to have a river going through the pool. And for me, a pool is always, rivers is always money. Money is flowing. So if you have opportunities for developers as well, and cater for them as well, you make them happy, then I think we can have a win-win situation.
Thank you very, very much. As said, it was a whole lot of information in a very short time. We have been granted permission to keep the PowerPoint presentation here and to distribute it to whoever would like to receive a copy. Furthermore, we have also recorded it on Zoom, and we'll put it on YouTube over the next couple of days. So if you would like to recap on what was said today, you're welcome to look into that. With that, I would like to thank you very much for all the information you presented here, and we're doing our part in sharing the information. Now it's over to you to get it across. As said, I'll invite you for a drink or two, have a discussion with the presenter today, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.